Good morning, everyone. I'm Sid. That's Mackie. Welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to talk about nutrition for mountain bikers. We got a lot of questions on our hydration video about what we eat on the bike, like how dialed is our nutrition. The answer to that question is our on the bike nutrition is not super scientific. We try to eat real food when we can, and when that's not possible, we eat some other stuff that we'll tell you about. But I think the main point that I wanted to make in this video is that a lot of people focus on what they're eating on the bike, and that's important, but it's also like a really small fraction of what you're eating over the course of the day. And what you're eating the rest of the day is way more important. So we're gonna talk a little bit about like general nutrition in a very unscientific way. I'm gonna show you what is on tap this morning for breakfast. We are gonna make some breakfast sandwiches. These are pancitos. In other words, little breads, but we got them from a Mexican bakery, and that's what they're called. And it's really throwing us back to the time we spent in Chile and Argentina, where you can just get these delicious little breads anywhere. Got some Tillamook cheddar, hummus, tomato, spinach, eggs, and a prickly pear, which we also got at the Mexican bakery grocery store thing, which we haven't had in forever, but they're awesome. So that's not going on a sandwich, just in case you're worried. Mackie's over here whipping up some bacon, and I've got my coffee. So all around normal morning here in Sid and Mackie town. Van's over there. We're camping in the wilderness and eating good food. So let's talk. So before we get started telling you what we eat and our diet, we just wanted to clarify that this is what works for us. We're not telling anyone what to do, although I think most of the things we talk about here are pretty sensible pieces of advice for anyone, regardless of what kind of diet you follow. I know that food is a very hot button topic for a lot of people, so if we welcome your comments and feedback, but really not interested in getting an argument in the comments about veganism or keto or gluten-free or any of that.
Any kind of diet that's going on.
Yeah, or any sort of fad diet stuff. We're not that interested in that. Feel free to give us your feedback, but this is what we do, this is what works for us, and we're probably not gonna change it based on a YouTube comment. Also, for the record, we've both worked with nutritionists and dietitians. We've done analysis of our diet. Basically, the conclusion is what we're eating is good. We could just eat possibly even more of it given our activity level. Our general food philosophy kind of borrows from the age-old Michael Pollan adage: eat real food, eat lots of plants, and don't eat too much. That's pretty easy. Beyond that, we eat literally everything. We don't restrict our diets at all. As far as produce goes, we try to buy organic when we can. We follow the, what's it called?
Clean 15, dirty dozen.
Clean 15, dirty dozen. We'll put a link to that below. It's basically, there are certain fruits and vegetables that buying organic is like really important, like spinach, for example, because there could be nasty pesticides on each and every one of these leaves. We also try to buy the cage-free eggs and the natural meats when we can, just because all that sort of hormone stuff is kind of freaky. And I've also definitely heard that like the nutritional value in like grass-fed beef way higher, because the cows are eating a variety of things, so you're getting a variety of things instead of just corn and antibiotics. So anyway, here's some grade A organic eggs that also happen to be 25% off. So funny story about these, the lady checking us out couldn't figure out how to give us 25% off, so we got them for free. So sometimes you just win when you buy cage-free eggs. That's the moral of this video. Happy chickens, free eggs or something. Look how good this bread looks. So excited.
Admittedly, it has been fried in bacon.
Yes. So it's gonna be delicious, basically. This is red jalapeno hummus from Hope Hummus, which has been a recent splurge because it's so freaking good.
It is really good.
It's more expensive than the other hummuses, but it's so good. We're gonna try to get them to sponsor us. So if anybody out there on the YouTube world knows anyone at Hope,
We'd love an introduction.
2 hungry mountain bikers really, really love their stuff. All right, we have a little ways to go before we're making BuzzFeed food videos. But that looks really good. A few more notes about our general diet before we start talking about ride food. We do not eat much processed food at all. We cook almost everything. We rarely go out to eat. Partially that's an expense thing. Partially it's just like what we enjoy. Like neither Mackie or I are that into like restaurant bar scene. We also don't really drink alcohol during the season. We don't not drink alcohol. We have been sponsored by a brewery. We love good beer, but the reality, and we'll put a link to this article from our training program from Carmichael Training Systems, is that if you're drinking alcohol after your ride, you're not getting the full benefits from that ride. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't. If like the benefit you want to get out of that ride is like having a good time with your friends and having a beer afterwards, then that's totally fine. If you're doing intervals, you probably shouldn't be having beer as a recovery drink. So that's sort of our philosophy on alcohol, sort of like everything else. Moderation is key. So the other thing we don't eat a ton of, especially when we're not riding our bikes, is sugar. I would say neither of us has a huge sweet tooth. Mackie has no sweet tooth at all.
Except for chocolate chip cookies.
Except for chocolate chip cookies. Even that though, like his whole family's like this. I've watched like a bag of cookies just like mold on their counter. Like nobody eats it.
It's true.
It's tragic. That is not the case for my family. Thanks to my dad. Hi, Dad. I do have a sweet tooth. I would say it's pretty moderate, though, by American standards. I sometimes like pastries with my coffee in the morning.
By which she means, if there's a pastry around, she will eat it with her coffee in the morning.
Anyway, we don't generally have pastries around for that very reason. But, you know, every once in a while, it's okay. I do think, especially as an athlete, and we're about to get into this, sugar is something you need to be a little careful of because most of the like ride food is packed with sugar. So if you're not eating much sugar in the rest of your diet and you're getting through your ride by eating honey stinger juice, that's great. However, if you're, say, getting up and, you know,
eating Cocoa Puffs
and then like having a Diet Coke or Diet Coke's the one without sugar. I don't know. We also don't drink soda, so there's that. And that's just like a taste thing. Neither of us were raised drinking it, so we have no interest in it. And it's terrible for you, so so that's good.
Angry comments in the comment section.
But I guess my point is, if you're eating a lot of sugar in your diet otherwise, that might be something you want to look into because high sugar foods are great while you're riding. I personally don't believe in like good or bad food. There's just bad times to be eating certain foods. A good time to be eating these is an hour into the Downeyville cross country race. A bad time to be eating these is pretty much any time you're not on your bike because it's candy. It's marketed as like having vitamin C in it, which is hilarious, but it's candy. If you're feeling annoyed that this information is buried halfway through the video, there's a reason for that, and that's because everything we were talking about before is probably 10 times more important.
And if not just from like a general life, but like a performance
from a performance
aspect.
standpoint.
Yeah.
If you want to get faster and stronger and better, your time is much better spent cleaning up your diet overall than like experimenting with different ride products.
Definitely.
That said, keeping yourself fed while you ride, especially if you're doing like an endurance race like we did in Downeyville, or if you're doing, you know, big long days, that's important. And if you have a sensitive stomach, like you have to think about that even more.
Yep.
We try to eat real food, i.e. not this crap, whenever possible.
So a lot of our rides, especially longer rides where where we're not necessarily doing anything real high intensity. So like we're going to pre-ride, or we're going to just do a big kind of endurance ride.
A sort of enduro style ride where we stop at the top and like stop and look at things on the way down.
Yep. We just eat real food.
Sandwiches, burritos.
You guys have seen our trail burritos.
Apples.
Yep.
Bananas. Bananas work even if you are doing something harder. They are kind of hard to... These ones, as you can see, have been squished just through van life. So obviously they struggle. When you up the intensity in a workout, it gets harder for your stomach to digest complex foods.
Yep.
So anything high in fiber or high in fat is not great. And also, if you want quick energy, you want simple carbohydrates. In other words, sugar.
Yep.
And as I talked about these things, we used the scratch ones. We just won a bunch of these at a race, so that was cool because they're kind of expensive. Stuff like this. Even these bars are a little bit more complex, but in sort of like a mid-level, high sugar, high carbohydrate, fast energy.
Easy to transport.
Also a little closer to real food.
Yeah.
This is a company called Taos Mountain Energy Bar that we've been working with for years. They are all real food ingredients.
And they sweeten it with things like molasses. And maple syrup.
High intensity, go for the sugar. I ate probably 2 packs of these on the last climb in Downeyville because I was cramping so bad. I don't know if that's good or not, but it did work. It stopped the cramping. One thing we don't eat is gels. That sort of goes back to the same principles that we talked about in our hydration video last week. If you haven't watched that, check that out first. Your body kind of registers a gel as a liquid, but it's a very thick liquid, so it wants to dilute it, so it pulls water out. That can make it really hard on your stomach. I don't do well with gels. Mackie doesn't have a problem with them. If you don't have a problem with them, go for it. It's fine.
Just the same thing. It's sugar, very fast.
However, if you do find that you get stomach issues after pounding a lot of gels, maybe try something like different. A chew or a chomp, or honestly, if your rides are less than 2 hours, not eating at all.
Yeah, if you're for rides under 2 hours, especially if you're not doing intervals, but honestly, even if you are doing intervals, you probably don't need to eat. Like, you should start the ride satiated. I won't say full, because obviously starting an interval ride full can have problems on its own. But like, you should start the ride not hungry, so that you can finish the ride and you're hungry at the end of the ride, and that's fine.
Your recovery drink, or your just like a snack, basically.
Eat something after the ride, and that fills you up and helps get those glycogen stores back, and you don't have to eat anything during the ride. Which, given how expensive ride food, that's also financially not a bad idea either.
Not a big difference between these and gummy bears.
Yeah. Basically, gummy bears are pretty close to the same thing.
These have some... Nope, this one doesn't have anything in it. I think these ones... No, I thought these had electrolytes in them.
Pretty much just sugar.
The caffeine ones, though, that can be a benefit at the end of a long race. Like, that's definitely something we talk about with our coach, either doing a chew like this that has a little bit of caffeine, or some of like the Scratch Lab matcha drink that has a little caffeine. So that's a benefit to these. These ones are literally just maybe moderately healthier than gummy bears, because they don't have high fructose corn syrup in them. They just have plain old sugar.
If you just
6 different types of plain old sugar.
Got gummy bears and
only ate them while you
were riding, that's going to be great. You're going to get your sugars, and that's fine. If that sounded pretty simple,
it's because
it is. Like, it doesn't have to be this super complicated, super hard to understand thing. If you are going out for a really long ride, obviously you're going to need food. Like, if you happen to be somewhere like the UK where there's a pub every 20 miles.
Someone in the UK is going to be like, there isn't a pub every 20 miles. But I swear, when we were riding in the UK, everyone would stop and get like a cup of tea. And we're like, we didn't bring money.
Yeah, everybody brought money. And we were like, really? And it was because there was always a pub. If you ride in the middle of nowhere, bring yourself some food. Real food's fine. If you are somewhere where you can stop and just buy food, great. That's awesome. But it's really just not that complicated. Race nutrition gets a little bit more complicated because the goal is performance and performing at your peak. But even for that, for enduro, we really often, especially for like the big EWS races that are 7-8 hours out, we're bringing burritos again because that's
or a sandwich,
or a
peanut butter and
sandwich.
jelly. Yeah, and I think that enduro sort of is way easier to fuel for because you have these breaks in intensity. So your stomach gets a break, you can kind of eat whatever, and then you can give yourself some time to digest that. We don't like eat an entire burrito before a stage. You know, like if I bring a burrito, I'll eat like an eighth of it at a time.
And what you should do there is finish your stage, eat at the end of your stage, and then transition, because that transition gives your stomach time to digest it so that when you go hard again on the next stage, you have already digested that so that you're not like getting stomach issues because of that. And for some people, that's not going to work. That's going to be too much like complex food, and that's fine. If that doesn't work for you, that's fine. Bring simple carbohydrates. Just realize that like when you're out for 7-8 hours, it's hard to not have any real food. Like your performance might suffer by the end because you've just been eating sugar for 6 hours.
Also, we somehow haven't touched on this, but the biggest rule in sports nutrition ever is do on race day what you do when you practice.
That's really
so if you
good
want to
point.
be able to eat a burrito in the middle of an 8-hour race, go for an 8-hour ride and eat a burrito.
Yeah.
Like make that your normal. Make it that you eat real food, then you ride, then you eat some more real food, then you ride some more, or something like that. If that's what you want to be able to do in the race. If you want to be able to tolerate eating a lot of these, eat them while you practice.
A lot of those
like
while
I
you're
practiced this for Downeyville because I didn't know what was going to happen. It was my first XC race in 4 years, and I didn't know if I was going to vomit when I ate chews, and the answer is no.
Yeah.
But I do have to really think about eating because I don't get hungry when I'm having that intensity, but I do still need that sugar. So let's transition to talk very briefly about XC racing, because I know we have some XC and enduro racers, or XC and endurance racers out there.
Yeah.
And I'm going to defer to Mackie.
I used to race cross country pretty seriously. What I remember is a coach telling me is basically at about an hour, you probably need to start taking in some calories. And, you know, for some people, as we talked about in our last hydration video, they're taking in calories with their drink mix. And if that works for you, great. I prefer to separate those. So I'll have a bar, maybe it's a little bit harder to digest. Or at the time I was using gels. I knew people who had like those squeezy flask bottles and they would just put honey in them or maple syrup in them or gel in them. But, you know, really it's whatever works for your stomach. And once again, you should practice this while training.
While doing high intensity rides.
While doing high intensity intervals. Practice it there. Make sure it works for you before you try it in a race. Let's say it's it's like a 1.5 to 2 hour race. You're not gonna need a ton. Like your body can go without food for an hour and a half, even at high intensity, but probably some sugar, 45 minutes to an hour in is gonna give you a little bit of a kick that you want to finish off the race strong.
Or a little bit of caffeine.
Yeah, or a little caffeine. For the longer ones, like we're talking stage races where maybe you're out for 3, 4, 5 hours, multiple days, they're probably gonna be aid stations, so you can just chow down on whatever they have there that sounds good to you. Sugar is going to be the easiest for your body to process once again, but it may be that you find at that duration that you need real food, at which point, something fairly simple like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich tends to be more easily processed by your body, or that's where like bars come in really nicely. Or if you do have a lot of
stomach issues, probably just like jelly on white bread.
Yeah,
peanut butter
exactly.
is a high fat thing. I personally have no problem digesting peanut butter, but I think some people do.
Yeah. So experiment with it, but experiment with it during pre-ride or during training, and then figure out what works for you and use that in racing. As we sort of spent the first part of this video talking about, the on-bike nutrition is not nearly as important. Like really there, all you should be worried about is like what gets you calories so that you don't crack and bonk while not hurting your stomach. Like if that's pure sugar, great. If that's maple syrup, great. If that's a bar, great. Like whatever works. But if you want to see performance improvements in general, your diet is going to be the most important thing. Anything else?
No, I think that's all.
All right.
Let's eat some sandwiches.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We will see you next time, and don't forget to be more awesome. That was Sid's seductive eating face.
No.